All right, we are now joined by News 10 Sports co-director Tim Staudt, fresh out of the set with this breaking news out of East Lansing, where head coach Mel Tucker has been suspended without pay from the Michigan State University football program. What are your initial thoughts coming off of all of this?
Well, I went to bed last night thinking, I wonder how State's going to play against Washington, because
Okay.
that's their first big game of the season, after two easy wins. Ironically enough, I was with the president, Teresa Woodruff, yesterday 3 times, once on the radio, once at Kyle's house, and once in her suite at the stadium, and I didn't detect any stress on her part. However, she did have one of her advanced people ask before the radio interview what questions I was going to ask her, which no one has ever done that before there. I didn't
Okay.
think much of it at the time. Whether that had anything to do with this, I don't know. If you listen to the athletic director, Alan Haller, he was aware of this. I, I think there's Paul Harvey, the late great, used to say, now let's do the rest of the story. There's an enormous amount of the rest of the story to this, and how much of it is going to develop, if that's the right term, moving forward remains to be seen. I think it's reasonably naive to think that Mel Tucker will return as the coach. He's obviously going to miss 3 games because his hearing isn't until October 5 and 6, and that's their bye week. They have Washington, and then the following week's homecoming here with the new Hall of Fame athletics class at Michigan State, and then it's the first road game at Iowa, and then it's the bye week. Now, what develops beyond that, frankly, what I think should stake here, if you want to cut to the chase, is $77 million, because that's what they owe him, all right, if they pay out the contract. At Northwestern, the issue in getting rid of the coach, Pat Fitzgerald, in the summertime,
Which is still fresh news.
it's still fresh news because they don't have a regular head coach; they have an interim coach. But the issue is, what do you do with the $40 million left on his contract? He thinks he should get it. The university doesn't. And the issue there was his argument: I was not given due process. Michigan State, I thought by the news conference today, clearly wanted to make it known that we are going to follow every single legal step to the letter of the law that we have to adjudicate this thing one way or the other fairly. But I think part of that is that if he didn't get it, if you fire him and he doesn't think that he got a fair hearing or due cause, then okay, you fired me, you owe me $77 million more. That's part of the $95 million deal that you gave me in the first place. In reading his contract, it's written to the extent where if they've got him for what he's accused of, plus anything from anybody else who may come forward, you never know about that. Then I think that's going to be difficult for him to claim anything close to what that contract still is worth. And to that end, does Michigan State, want to pay out $77 million more dollars to a coach who's not going to coach? Because I would be thunderstruck if he comes back. I think this has gone too far. I don't think there are many people, frankly, in the athletic department who are overwhelmingly surprised. The major coaches at these schools are under a microscope. Everybody follows them, sees them, follows them. What he does with his own time, I don't know. I'm not around him. I only see him when he's coaching. But I think, there are others, so on and so forth. Harlan Barnett, who's the interim coach, he's been on the staff a while. He has a relationship with Mark D'Antonio. They call Mark D'Antonio the associate head coach, but frankly, I think he's more an advisory role
Okay.
to help calm down the players, keep the players focused. I'd be very surprised if he's in there making game plans per se, because that staff is Mel's staff. That's not D'Antonio's staff. I don't think you want to rock the boat any more than it's already been rocked today.
So for those just joining us, we do have a question. Just what exactly led up to this? What is Mel Tucker accused of?
Well, there was a story overnight in USA Today, and I'm going to paraphrase all this, okay?
Okay.
In which
I did link our web story in this chat so
the
people can see
activist,
it.
what's her name? She was here, and she maintains publicly that he inappropriately tried to maintain a relationship with her. He claims that the relationship that he admits to was consensual. She says no, and where this goes from here simply remains to be seen. Look, this is complicated, and it's not an easy subject. To how far into this subject, do people want to hear? because it's a difficult subject. You didn't hear all the gory details at the news conference. The president clearly, she wants to make it, this is going to be fair, and that if you got a problem with what he's accused of on campus, come see us. We'll get counseling for you, whatever. All right, Alan Haller, he clearly wanted to make the case that he's going to get a fair hearing, but in the meantime, we believe this is serious enough. The decision to suspend him with pay or without pay surprised me a bit. I would have thought he'd be suspended with pay, which assumes innocence until proven guilty of whatever it would be guilty of to violate his contract. The decision in that regard, that I don't know. I don't know what went into that. And he only took 3 questions anyway. So, like he said, there's only so much I can say about this. Look, this is territory that's not comfortable for anybody at Michigan State, given the issues that the school has had dating back to the Nassar days. And so, how this, I don't think there's any short-term conclusion to this story. There was no short-term conclusion on the Nassar story.
Right.
I don't think there's any
It's still
short-term
going on.
conclusion on this. Football is an enormously exposed sport at this level across America, certainly at Michigan State. So the microscope that's on the program is huge, every day of the year in some cases. So
going back to the contract and how it was written in versus how the Pat Fitzgerald contract is that something that has just come as this is the new way schools have to make their contracts to protect themselves?
Well, the world is changed, as you know. I mean, in a correctness world, I mean, in Fitzgerald's case, this hazing thing was exposed in the newspapers, and it got to the president. And in his case, once again, the issue there is do we have time to fire him before the season starts? Already, I'm seeing on the internet questions: if Michigan State had this report July 25th, why did it wait till now?
That was a lot of the questions.
And part of it was because it got exposed overnight in USA Today. But when that report was, right off the top of my head, that was around the Big Ten football media days. Michigan had enough issues at the media days with Harbaugh and his suspension. In the world we live in today, do you realize that there are 3 Big Ten football schools right now that have interim coaches? Michigan's got assistant coaches for another week with Harbaugh. Michigan State now has an interim coach, and Northwestern's coach is an interim coach for this season. It's a different world out there. I mean, man, it's a different world.
Do you ever remember a time there was more than one in the Big Ten?
At this point in the Michigan State has dismissed football coaches during the season before, but never after a 2-0 start and 2 games into the season. What I'm curious too is, will others come forward besides the complainant of this Title IX issue? Is anybody, that happened with the Nassar story,
Yes.
Obviously. It's happened elsewhere.
It happened with
where
Northwestern.
Someone filed something, and at Northwestern. Then others have come forward, credibly or not. Whether that happens here or not simply remains to be seen.
And what about the suspension length? Do you think they're going to, I know you're...
Well, if I was guessing, and I'm only guessing, he'll be given absolutely every opportunity to state his case, to make whatever claim. The problem you have with this is, in the world of collegiate sports at this level, your recruiting takes a massive hit. I mean, the guys that Tucker has verbally committed for next year, they don't sign till December. Well, if you're going to get those guys, you say, who are you going to play for? If you look what the conditions are at that school with that coach. I mean, recruiting's vicious. So are any of those guys going to be around in December for him or anybody else who's the next coach? The transfer portal, the way it is, are guys that say this is a great time to leave. I'm out of here because of all of the chaos that's going on within the program. You've still got 10 big games left to play in the season. 4 of them are home. Penn State's Thanksgiving Friday night and national TV with Penn State.
In Ford Field.
I don't know how good this team is based off the 2 teams they've beaten so far. You're going to learn a lot more on Saturday. How much impact these developments have on Michigan State's football performance on the field moving forward, that I'm not sure of yet.
Let's go back to his contract because there is a significant amount left that is under question. He signed a 90, correct me if I'm wrong, 90 million,
95
million
10
10-year
years.
contract.
Right.
And that alone was news
It
that
makes him one of the highest paid coaches in any aspect of sports, not just college football, but
Right.
in any aspect of sports, pro or college. And of course, that has been controversial ever since it was approved after the Michigan win in 2021. He came off a 2-5 year during COVID. Most people threw that out just because of all the uncertainty around COVID. Okay, and then he got Kenneth Walker and an 11-2 record, and the word is that LSU was chasing him against Brian Kelly. I've never really thought LSU was serious. Plus the fact I would have said anyway, look, you have a contract. If you're not going to honor it to begin with, he didn't honor his Colorado contract. I mean, it still got to me, and I have nothing against him or any other coach for that matter, but it did get to me that he told the Colorado Boosters, according to Sports Illustrated, that he was going to stay at Colorado. And then 3 hours later, when Michigan State upped the ante, I'll go to Michigan State. I mean, he told them he was going to be at Colorado for those donors to stay with the Colorado program. And by the way, what do you think they think of at Colorado right now? Because Michigan State went after their coach under contract and got him. Look where Michigan State is today, and look where Colorado is today, for whatever that's worth.
there's a couple of questions about Tucker's history of not being fully committed to his previous coaching positions.
Well, he would have been committed for $95 million. He has a 10-year background in the NFL. He's got 10 years of NFL experience. I would think, just like Pat Fitzgerald, I think there are some coaches that can violate some NCAA rules and they'll get hired elsewhere. Nick Saban he's resurrected a lot of coaches who got fired for one reason or another. He's had coaches who had alcoholism and issues there, and he's hired them if they, But I think there's some issues where the baggage is so heavy, and I think in Fitzgerald's case, clearly that's a problem, and I think it's clearly, probably collegiately, depending on how this all plays out moving forward, for Tucker if he wants to continue, because I just don't see Michigan State. I just don't know how they're going to bring him back, because I think that complainant is very credible from what I can tell. She's credible. And then, as I say, depending on how that plays out, is someone else going to come forward with a similar type of issue to relate? That's what happened in the Nassar story, and has happened in other stories like that, and has happened with public figures in entertainment. Where they're accused of one thing, and then all of a sudden somebody else comes forward, and then it just snowballs into a much bigger problem.
Politics, yeah.
I'm thinking of Matt Lauer at NBC. I'm thinking of Bill O'Reilly at Fox. It started with one, and then others came forward. I'm not saying that's the case with Tucker. I don't know, but history would tell you that in these types of stories, once somebody comes forward, then credibly or otherwise, others come forward too. Whether that happens here, I don't know.
So they have announced that Harlan Barnett will be the acting head coach with D'Antonio as assistant head coach. What can you tell me about Barnett?
He played at Michigan State. He's been on the Michigan State staff under several head coaches. He was brought back from Florida State by Mel Tucker. He's the defensive backfield coach. There are some who were surprised that he was retained because Michigan State's secondary last fall struggled. They were last in pass interceptions in that. But he's an elder statesman. He knows the university. I just think he's probably popular with a player. Look, at this point, moving forward, you got to figure out a way for all those players to somehow move forward going through all this chaos and still represent Michigan State on the field. Because you think this is going to come up on all these telecasts moving forward now? This is going to come up on every single game moving forward, I would think, to the end of the season. Last year after the Michigan tunnel incident, they had 8 guys suspended. State went to Illinois, and I thought, oh man, they're in such. And Illinois had 1 loss on the year, and I thought State's got no shot in this thing. And they went on the road, and they won. Now, whether this will galvanize these players to win one for Mel or win one for Harlan, or we're going to show that we can rise above, whether that all occurs or not remains to be seen. They could have that attitude of watch us play now. We're going to be dedicated to that. But you're not good enough, and maybe they will lose to Washington and or Maryland and or Iowa and Michigan, Penn State, whatever, moving forward. Or it could split them completely apart, too. I would think it would be tough for those players.
So what do you say to those players as they go into this weekend
that's tough.
Facing Washington? Plus, they're serving alcohol.
That's one reason to get D'Antonio.
Okay.
Is because D'Antonio has a track record Okay, he's been here. He's a mild-mannered, soft-spoken, players type of guy, and I think I don't see. I just think he's a figurehead for them for the credibility that he brings. If we're going to make a change, we bring. But I don't see him overstepping his authority either. I don't see him going in there and revolutionizing how they run offense. And he knows. Mark's retired for a reason. He didn't need the stress anymore. There's no pressure on him. There's no pressure on him in this. All like he said, how can I help? And I think they want him for some stability here in the short term. But this is going to be an unstable situation. There's no question about it, because there are going to be stories that are going to develop one way or the other. Because you know how the media is with a story like this, especially with Michigan State football or anything Michigan State. It's like when the Nasser story broke, the media from all over the country got in on the thing. One way or the other, they all got in on it. So something like football's a big deal. You'll see stories.
And with Michigan State football Michigan State as a whole being under such a microscope.
Well, that's part of it.
What do you say to the supporters, the donors, like anybody who's a recruit looking to come in?
I mean, that's going to be I never had the feeling that Mel, if he would have asked me for my advice only from the standpoint of being here around coaches, I would have said to him, you need to look at how Izzo relates to the people here in a variety of different ways, because he doesn't win all the games either.
No.
But when he doesn't win all the games, one way or the other, he's very adept, in my opinion, of being able to have everybody relate to him and vice versa. I never quite felt that way with Mel, that he had nearly the same cognitive relationship with a lot of the Michigan State following one way or the other. A lot of it's not his personality to begin with, but if you're the head football coach at a place like this, I mean, you want friends, you don't want enemies. And I just think there are a lot of people and I think that contract hurt him. I think everybody thought, $95 million, you better win every single game. You better win every single game. $95 million, why is he losing a game? Why did he not go to a bowl last year? I mean, that hurt him too. I mean, that contract's great if you get it, you're winning. But if you get that and you're not winning more than what he has, I think that's an issue with a number of Michigan State people long term. Plus the Colorado departure he had, and I just, and whatever anybody thinks of what they've heard behind the scenes or anything else, whatever that could be, how much you accept as fact what people say about you, because as I say, these Michigan State jobs, some of them you're under a microscope, fair or unfair. Every move you make publicly is analyzed.
Do you think the major contract that MSU gave Tucker came a little too soon, that he hadn't proved himself quite yet?
If it was my call, no coach would get anything like that, because
I do remember you saying that.
In my opinion, you're telling someone, Izzo's the same way. You're bigger than Michigan State. I don't think we should have anyone here who's bigger than Michigan State University. You're also saying, gee, if we lose this guy, we'll never find another coach to win here. Tom doesn't make close to what Tucker makes. How that ever got approved. But, I mean, let's tell it like it is. There are going to be those behind the scenes over there that are going to say, we could save $77 million now.
Yes.
The only way we're going to save it is if he violates that contract. So the more that's going to come out, they're going to cover every single legal base they can possibly cover. They'll make sure everything is on the up and up and up. Frankly, he's going to get every opportunity to exonerate himself. If he does, he does. But if he doesn't, then, let the legal games begin, because it isn't going to be, does he come back to coach? It's what's the compensation going to be? And does he have anything on anybody else over there that he can use in one way that might affect some kind of a settlement? Like I say, with all this, today it's early. This is day one of this issue. Stay tuned.
Speaking of stay tuned, you are going to be headed back down in about 10 minutes. We're going to be back on News 10 at 6 p.m. with Seth Wells and Tim Staudt, as you saw right here. Of course, we have all of the latest on our website, WILX.com, on all streaming platforms and on our app. Tim, thank you so much. Odd seeing you on a Sunday, but thanks for coming in and explaining a little bit more to everybody who is watching this. Again, we're going to have more coming up in a little bit later. You'll see Tim in about 10 minutes or so on News 10 at 6 p.m. Thanks for watching.
Okie doke.